Acharya Astu Tarasata Srishmada's Divine Grace of High Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Kodanitai Maya Prashashi Ki Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai Vaishnav Sangha Ki Jai Hari Bol. Appearance days or display?
I don't think so. I think something I'm doing.
Okay, so we're reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, final volume, Uniting Two Worlds, and the chapter's called At Home in India. Hari Sori had little personal association with his spiritual master. Wow, this is his first day. Hari Sori had little personal association with his spiritual master, but one day in Vrindavan, Prabhupada asked to see him to point out a serious discrepancy. As temple commander, Hari Sori had asked an old man not to eat in front of the deity in the temple. The old man had become upset and a young Bengali man had defended him, shouting at Hari Sori that he had no right to criticize anyone in the temple. Hari Sori had attempted to ignore him, but the young Bengali had continued shouting and threatening to throw him out of the temple and cut off his shikha. Finally, Hari Sori had twisted the young man's arm and had told the chowkidar to throw him out. Srila Prabhupada soon heard of the incident and called for Hari Sori. How inauspicious, Hari Sori thought. The first time my spiritual master has ever called for me, and it's over a bad incident like this. Prabhupada did not immediately reprimand him, but first asked for his version of what had happened. Hari Sori appreciated the opportunity and he began to tell the whole story. When he mentioned that the old man had asked to speak with an authority and that he had told him he was the temple commander, Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Prabhupada gave his disciple a penetrating glance. Temple commander does not mean commander-in-chief. Where have you heard this about eating prasadam in front of the deity? Hari Sori could not remember an exact reference and he became embarrassed. Well, I thought I read it in one of your books, Srila Prabhupada, he said. Prabhupada looked at him again. He could understand his disciple's ignorant mistake. Because of the boy's inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done. Actually, because of the sensitive relationship between ISKCON devotees and the residents of Vrindavan, he should have tolerated the abuse. His was an ignorant mistake, but ignorance was no excuse. This is a great offence, said Prabhupada. He will go out and tell so many people that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. Prabhupada looked gravely at Harisori. Now you find out where this man is staying, he said, and you bring him back here. Invite him to come back. Harisori tried his best, looking all day for the young Bengali man, who was reportedly staying at a hotel in Mathura. He was unsuccessful, however. Disappointed, he returned to the temple. And as soon as he returned, a devotee came and told him Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought, now Prabhupada will be really angry. Harisori entered Srila Prabhupada's room, which was filled with guests. This boy has come, said Prabhupada. And as Harisori looked around, he saw the young Bengali man. The man smiled and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. So you give him this fruit, said Prabhupada to Harisori, indicating a basket of fruit sitting on the floor. He then dismissed them and continued preaching to the others in the room. The disagreement was settled, but it had been Prabhupada himself who had changed the young man's heart and rectified a volatile incident.
Very well.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When Harisori tells the story, he says that he came into Prabhupada's room the second time, and Prabhupada called him over, and Prabhupada kept speaking in his ear, and Harisori just couldn't understand what Prabhupada was saying, and he kept asking Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And Prabhupada tried 4 or 5 times, and eventually Prabhupada told another devotee, you tell him. And then the devotee said, there he is, he's over there, that's the boy. So it's quite funny the way he tells the story. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 17. The Lord travels to Vrindavan, beginning with text number 83?
87.
87. Oh, beginning with 87. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of purports. One of them's a little longer, but I'm going to read that one and then sort of skip over to the next one. So there's a little more to speak about. So with great pleasure, Tapan Mishra brought Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home and rendered service unto him. Indeed, he began to dance, waving his cloth. He washed the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and afterwards he and his whole family drank the wash water. He also worshipped Balabhadra Bhattacharya and showed him respect. Tapan Mishra invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take lunch at his home, and he had Balabhadra Bhattacharya cook. Purport. While at Varanasi, Benares, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed at the house of Tapan Mishra. Near Tapan Mishra's house was a bathing ghat known as Panchanadi Ghat. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to take his bath daily at this ghat, and he used to see the temple of Bindu Madhava. Then he would take his lunch at Tapan Mishra's house. Near the Bindu Madhava temple is a big banyan tree, and it is said that after eating, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to rest beneath the tree. That banyan tree is still known today as Chaitanya Vat. Gradually, due to changes in language, the name became Yatan Vat. The local people still call that place Yatan Vat. At present, beside a lane, there is a tomb of Vallabhacharya, but there is no sign that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ever lived there. Vallabhacharya was also known as Mahaprabhu among his disciples. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu probably lived at Yatanvat, but there is no sign of Chandrasekhara's or Tapan Mishra's house, nor is there any sign of the Mayavadi sannyasi Prakashananda Saraswati, with whom Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussed the Vedanta Sutra. A little distance from Yatanvat is a temple of Gaura Nityananda, established by Shashibhushan Niyogi Mahashaya of Calcutta. During the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this temple was managed by the mother-in-law of Shashibhushan and his brother-in-law Narayan Chandra Ghosh. Text 90. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his rest after lunch, the son of Tapan Mishra named Raghu used to massage his legs. The remnants of food left by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were taken by the whole family of Tapan Mishra. When news spread that the Lord had come, Chandrasekhara came to see him. Chandrasekhara happened to be a friend of Tapan Mishra's, and he was long known to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his servant. He was a physician by caste, and by profession he was a clerk. At the time he was living in Varanasi. When Chandrasekhara came there, he fell down before the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and began to cry. The Lord, standing up, embraced him out of his causeless mercy. Chandrasekhara said, "My dear Lord, you have bestowed your causeless mercy upon me because I am your old servant. Indeed, you have come here personally to give me your audience. Due to my past deeds, I am residing at Varanasi. But here I do not hear anything but the words Maya and Brahman." Purport. The word prarabdhe, past deeds, is important to this verse. Since Chandrasekhara was a devotee, he was always eager to hear about Krishna and his transcendental pastimes. Most of the inhabitants of Benares were and are impersonalists, worshippers of Lord Shiva and followers of the Panchopasana method. The impersonalists imagine some form of the impersonal Brahman, and to facilitate meditation, they concentrate upon the forms of Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, Surya, and goddess Durga. Actually, these Panchopasakas are not devotees of anyone. As it is said, to be a servant of everyone is to be a servant of no one. Varanasi or Kashi is the chief holy place of pilgrimage for impersonalists, and it is not at all suitable for devotees. A Vaishnava likes to live in a Vishnu Tirtha, a place where Lord Vishnu's temples are present. In Varanasi there are many hundreds and thousands of Lord Shiva's temples, or Panchopasaka temples. Consequently, Chandrasekhara expressed great unhappiness as he informed Lord Chaitanya that he was obliged to live at Benares due to his past misdeeds. As said in the Bhaktirasamrita Sindhu, Dujat arambakam papam yatsyad parabdam evatat. According to one's past misdeeds, one takes birth on a lower platform. But in the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Kamani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. There is no karma attached to the past deeds or misdeeds of one in devotional service. A devotee is not subjected to karma pala, the effect of fruit of activity. Karma pala is applicable to karmis, not bhaktas. There are three kinds of devotees. Those who are eternally on the transcendental platform, Nitya Siddha. Those who have been elevated to the transcendental platform by the execution of devotional service, Sadhana Siddha. And those who are neophytes advancing towards the perfectional platform, Sadhaka. The sadhakas are gradually becoming free from fruitive reaction. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu describes the symptoms of Bhakti Yoga thus. Kleshagni Shubhada Moksha Laguta Krit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Karshini Chasa. Devotional service is Kleshagni, even for beginners. This means that it reduces or nullifies all kinds of suffering. The word Shubhada indicates that devotional service bestows all good fortune, and the word Krishna Akarshini indicates that devotional service gradually attracts Krishna towards the devotee. Consequently, a devotee is not subject to any sinful reaction. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sara Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sava Papebhyo Mokshayashami Ma Suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Thus, a fully surrendered, sincere devotee immediately receives relief from all kinds of sinful reactions. There are 3 stages of fructification for sinful activity. At one stage, one commits the sinful act. But before that, the seed of this act exists. And even before that, there is ignorance whereby one commits the sin. Suffering is involved in all 3 stages. However, Krishna is merciful to his devotee, and consequently he immediately nullifies all 3 stages: the sin, the seed of sin, and the ignorance that leads one to sin. The Padma Purana confirms this. Aprarabdha palam papam kutam bijam palunmukam krameneva praliyeta Vishnu Bhakti Ratatmanam. For a further explanation of this topic, one should consult the Nectar of Devotion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschajadesha Tarane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's nice Prabhupada keeps using this word misdeeds. Sometimes we're looking for language which is sort of more appealing or attractive or sort of relevant to the audience in the sort of time in which we're speaking, and sometimes some of the words that we're familiar with using have these sort of implications, sort of fundamental religious implications, like sinful activity and things like this, and sometimes it can kind of jolt us a little bit when we hear these kind of words. But here Prabhupada uses the word misdeeds. I think it's a nice, it's quite a user-friendly word. It's quite user-friendly. It means the same thing, performing activities which create negative reactions, which create negative, which bind us in a negative way to the material world. It means the same thing, but sometimes just the words that we use and the language that we use, that can be much more sort of appealing to people, and therefore people sort of take more notice of the message. So I like this word misdeeds. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he's kind of summarizing this whole process which Srila Rupa Goswami describes in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, all about how the living entities actually do become entangled in the material world due to their misdeeds. So we come into the material world, we're not this body. You know, the first thing that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita is that we're not these material bodies, we're not the mind. This is a huge aspect of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is just really just setting the scene. It's describing the situation in which Krishna is actually going to speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. It's describing the battlefield. It's describing a little of the events which lead up to the war which is about to take place. And then it describes Arjuna's difficulties and dilemmas that he's experiencing on the battlefield. And then he surrenders to Krishna. He basically approaches Krishna and says, I can't deal with this myself. I don't have the answer to this dilemma myself. Therefore, because Arjuna was in a friendly relationship with Krishna, Sakyaras, he was in a friendly relationship with Krishna. But he put aside that friendly relationship with Krishna and he accepts Krishna as his guru. Text 7 of chapter 2. How does it begin? Karpanya dosha bhata subhava prichami tvam dhamma samuda chechaha yatstriya stiyandischitam bruhitam me shishasteham sarimam tvam prapanam. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. So this is really where the Bhagavad Gita begins. Up until that point, it's just setting the scene, but then this is where Krishna's teachings really begin. Arjuna accepts Krishna no longer as a friend, but as his teacher, as his guru. And then Krishna begins to instruct him in the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And the first thing that Krishna does, beginning with text number 10, of chapter 1, and then going right through till text number 30, 20 verses non-stop. Krishna gives one after another, after another, after another, metaphors, similes, analogies, explaining why we are not this body, we're not the mind, we're not the intelligence, we're the spirit soul. This is our true eternal identity as spirit soul. So this is the foundation of the Bhagavad Gita. And you could say it's the foundation of the foundation, because the Bhagavad Gita, that is the foundation of our knowledge, of our understanding of spiritual life. And the foundation of the Bhagavad Gita is this knowledge of identity. So it's described that there are three categories of knowledge: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Anyone who may be watching who was at the Gita Life program last night, I have to apologize because we're going to cover a lot of the same things again, so I hope you don't mind going over them again. But Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So Sambandha means knowledge of identity, and Sambandha Abhideya is knowledge of the process which allows us to actually realize that identity and awaken that identity. So it goes from theory to practice. And then Prayojana is the result of putting that knowledge into practice, that by putting that knowledge into practice and by awakening our eternal spiritual identity, then pure spiritual love, prema, awakens within the heart. So these are the three different categories of knowledge and understanding. And Bhagavad Gita, although it touches on all three of these aspects, a lot of the Bhagavad Gita is about Sambandha, knowledge of identity. It's not just chapter 2 that deals with one's knowledge of identity, but all the other chapters as well explain, well, what is that identity and how do we sort of apply that identity. And then the result of acting upon this knowledge of identity is that one becomes free from the reactions within the heart, because the reactions in the heart, they become manifested basically in the form of false ego and suffering. And suffering, the suffering that we experience is generally as a result of our false ego, as a result of our misidentification. I've had a wonderful experience over the last few weeks, or last couple of weeks, when I've been going for my daily walks. I've been listening to His Holiness Srila Radhanath Swami's narration of his own book, The Journey Home. So I've read it before a few years ago. This is the second time I've gone through it, and this time Maharaj, he's actually narrating his own book. It's a really, really wonderful experience. And a couple of things really struck me when I was hearing it yesterday and today. Today, when I was listening to it, he was describing how in his sort of journeys particularly through the jungles of India, at one point he stumbled across a leper colony. And it was quite a traumatic experience for him. He sort of became trapped within this colony while they were begging him to please help them in some way. And as he was, he was terrified that, he was going to end up practically having to join the leper colony because leprosy is a contagious disease. And as he was trying to get out of that situation, he saw one lady lying on the floor who was obviously in great physical distress, but she looked at him and she gave him this look which was so much full of love and compassion, and she raised her hand to bless him. And when he saw that it had such a powerful effect on him, he went over there and he took shelter of that lady and accepted her blessings. And this is one example of someone who, despite the sort of sufferings that the body's going through, is not so affected by the false ego. And Maharaj makes the point in his book that, to the degree that we hold on to material attachments and to the degree that we hold on to material desires, to that degree we suffer in the world. But if we're not attached to our body, if we're not attached to our mind, if we're not attached to our false ego, then when these things are sort of taken away from us, it doesn't cause so much distress. So the karma that we experience, the negative karma, the bad karma, even the good karma, but let's focus on bad karma for now. The bad karma that we experience in the world, the experience itself is basically due to our attachment, our false ego. So once we start acting in this knowledge of identity, once we actually act on the spiritual platform, and to the degree that that identity of spirit soul is awakened within us, to the degree that we actually have realization, and it's not an overnight thing. It's not that we're going to suddenly wake up one morning and we're going to be a self-realized soul. Self-realization is a gradual process. We come into Krishna consciousness generally very bewildered and confused, and quite often it's that bewilderment and confusion that brings us to the point of searching for answers. And then we find an answer in the form of Krishna consciousness and the bhakti teachings. And then as we start acting on those teachings, not just hearing those teachings, but actually living those teachings, acting on those teachings, then to that degree that we're acting on them, then gradually we become free from false ego, and gradually our true ego, our real ego, our real identity of spirit soul becomes awakened within the heart. And when we may not even be so conscious of it. It may not feel so much like a prison. But basically, this is what the material world is. Like is described here in the purport, due to our misdeeds, so due to the misdeeds of a citizen, they may be put into a lockdown, they may be put into a prison situation. And what is the purpose of the prison situation? It's not just meant to punish the living entities. It's actually meant to rehabilitate and rectify. Now, we may have questions and doubts as to the effectiveness of the prison system, whether it effectively does rectify or rehabilitate people. But really speaking, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to rehabilitate people. People go into prison due to having a sort of contaminated mentality as to what is proper behavior and what is acceptable behavior, And then they go into prison, and the prison system, as well as sort of punishing them for those misdeeds, it's also supposed to provide facility and opportunity and education within the prison system, whereby the prisoners can actually come to understand what they did wrong, why it was wrong, what is the proper behavior, what is the benefit of behaving properly, what is the why it's actually nicer to behave properly than behave in an improper way. And in this way, the prison system is meant to rectify and rehabilitate people. And the way the prison system works is that, the judge may condemn a prisoner to 10, 15 years of imprisonment. But after 5 years, there may be a review. They may look at that prisoner and say, well, although you were sentenced to this long, we can see that you've really taken advantage of the opportunity for rehabilitation and rectification and education, and now we can see that actually you're now suitable for going back into society and being a good citizen, and we'll even help you. We'll even help to find accommodation for you. We'll help to find employment for you. And in this way, the system, the prisoner is released early and is able to then go out into the world. So in the same way, we have our karma. We're in the material world. We have our karma. And due to our karma, due to the reactions to our misdeeds, we are basically sentenced to experience certain reactions to that karma, certain experiences in life that we're destined to go through as a result of our past activity. But if we take advantage of the education, the rectification and the rehabilitation which is offered by the process given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, then to the degree that we take advantage of that opportunity, to that degree the contamination in the heart which caused us to misidentify ourselves with the body and the mind, and which, therefore caused us to act in a way which was improper, to commit the misdeeds that caused us to be bound up by the law of karma in the first place. To the degree that we become free from that, then simultaneously we also become free from the karmic reactions. The heart actually becomes purified of karmic reactions. Why would Krishna want to punish a living entity or want to put a living entity through suffering if Krishna can see and Krishna can understand? Because Krishna is in the heart of all living entities. Krishna knows the heart of the living entity. If the living entity is genuinely regretful and remorseful and rectified and rehabilitated, then what does that bad karma, what purpose does it serve? It doesn't serve any more purpose. So, and Krishna being the proprietor of the material world, the proprietor of the prison, just like the king can walk into the prison. Maybe it's a slightly dated analogy. I'm not sure if the queen could literally walk into any prison and just release anyone that she wants. But in the past, it was actually the case that in a monarchy that the king or the queen could, if they wanted, just sign a pardon, and that person is free to go. So in the same way, Krishna is the proprietor of the material world. Everything comes from him. Aham savasya prabhavo mata savam prabhatateti matva bhajanti mam buddhabhava samamvitaha. Krishna says in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Spiritual and material worlds, everything emanates from me. The wise who know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So knowing that Krishna is the proprietor of the material world, then the wise living entities, they engage in activities to serve and to please the proprietor of the material world, and by doing that, the proprietor of the material world, Krishna, he can sign a pardon, let the demigods know this person is no longer needs to suffer due to his past misdeeds, because rectification is there, rehabilitation is there, purification is there. It serves no more purpose, so wipe the slate clean. And in this way we become free from the reactions of our past misdeeds. And this is a very very technical science, like Srila Prabhupada says there in the purport. He gives a summary, and then at the end he says, if we want to know more, then we can read the Nectar of Devotion. and in the Nectar of Devotion it goes into even more detail. And then if we read the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which the Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of. We see Rupa Goswami's commentaries, we see Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries, we see Srila Jiva Goswami's commentaries. It's a very, very big science. There's a lot to be said on it. It's very technical, it's very intricate. The law of karma is a very complicated subject. It's not black and white. Sometimes we read statements in Srila Prabhupada's books which, if misread or misunderstood, or if taken out of context, it can appear that certain things are very, very black and white. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. But this is more to give sort of a general idea of the implications of the law of karma. Like, for instance, in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we read all about how if living entities engage in certain misdeeds in the material world, the result will be that they will go to their lower planetary systems and suffer in certain very, very specific ways. And it's a fact that these reactions are there, but karma is a very, very complex thing. It's a very, very complex thing indeed. It's never black and white. It's very complicated and very, very complex. But so there are the details which can be very, very, very complex, but the principle is that we are bound up in the material world due to our misdeeds. Lord Chaitanya, in the Shastikam prayers, what is it he says? Ayinanda Tanujikin Karam Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayati Papatapanka Jasti Taduli Sadrisham Vachintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other I've fallen into this material world. So we can get so caught up. How did we end up in the material world? Where did we come from? What's the origin of the jiva? Sometimes we don't want to get into it. Acharyas do get into it, but one acharya may say one thing, another says another thing. They discuss, they kind of, there's different sort of points of view, different understandings. Where did we come from? How did we end up here? But Lord Chaitanya is saying, somehow or other I got here. Now how am I going to get out of here? Let's not focus so much on how I ended up in this situation. Let's put our energy into thinking, how can I get out of this situation? It's like if you're sort of trapped, if you're trapped, I don't know, if you're stuck in a maze, or if you're stuck in a deep forest, or you're stuck in a cave system or something like that, and time's running out, the light's fading, air's running out. You don't spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure out how you got there. The point is, how are we going to get out? How do we get out of this situation? So there are so many details about the law of karma. There are so many details about how we ended up in the situation that we're in. But the principle is that by acting on Krishna's instructions, by living the Bhagavad Gita, by putting into practice the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, then this is our way out of this situation. This is how we get out of the material world. So this is the goal. The goal is not to try and figure out, although for some people it's important for them to know these things. The knowledge is there, the information is there, the acharyas have spoken about it, but at least in our foundational stage of Krishna consciousness, we want to try and sort of build quite a strong foundation of our knowledge of our relationship with Krishna. And knowledge of that relationship with Krishna is the real key. And it's also the key for understanding all these little confusing details which we may read. If we have this very strong foundation of sambandha, very strong foundation of our knowledge of our relationship with Krishna, then when we see everything else through the lens of that knowledge, then everything else makes sense. So this is the most important thing, is to really establish what is my relationship with Krishna. And the most important principle of our relationship with Krishna, especially in our foundational, in the foundational period of our bhakti, is das das anudas. There are so many ways in which we can have a relationship with Krishna, but the principle for all devotees of Krishna, it may come a time in our lives when we become attracted to these different rasas, these different relationships, Madhurya ras, Sakya ras, Vatsalya. But the principle on which to build all of this is Naham Vipro Nacha Narapatya Napi Vaishyo Na Sudro, Naham Vani Nacha Gurihapatya Navanasto Yatyeva, Kintupro Janikila Paramananda Purnamritam Dear Gopi Batu Harikamaleo Das Das Anudas. I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Sudra, I'm not a Brahmachari, I'm not a Grihastha, I'm not a Vanaprastha, I'm not a sannyasi, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the eternal residents of the spiritual world. And so with a servant of Krishna, with a servant of Krishna's devotees. And so Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita teaches us how to serve Krishna. And that service begins with Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. So this is the beginning of our bhakti. Whatever situation we're in life, wherever we are, however we're restricted, however we're limited in what we're able to do, we can hear about Krishna, we can chant Krishna's names, and we can remember Krishna. This is bhakti yoga. And actually this is the foundation of bhakti yoga. Without hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna, the other activities that we do, it casts a doubt over to what extent those activities are actually qualified as bhakti. But if hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna is there as the foundation of those activities, then all the other activities, they also become bhakti. Because bhakti means Krishna consciousness of Krishna, remembering Krishna, meditating on Krishna. And that remembrance and that meditation, that comes through hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna. This is service. Hearing about Krishna is devotional service. Chanting Krishna's names is devotional service, and remembering Krishna is devotional service. This is bhakti. So, is anyone online? We have anyone watching online? So if anyone's online, if anyone has any questions or comments or reflections on any of the things that we've said, then share those with us. And then while you're typing those in, then we can ask the devotees here in the temple room if they have any questions or comments or reflections.
In the packet it mentions no one's servant is, everyone's servant is no one's servant.
Yeah.
But I thought we're supposed to think we're everyone's servant.
Yeah, it's quite a striking thing. It struck me as well when we read it. And we have to take it in context. We have to take it in the context. It's not that just that one sentence on its own, we can't quote that out of context. What's the context that Srila Prabhupada is speaking it in? He's speaking it in terms of Panchopasana method of worship and meditation. That the Mayavadis in Benares were following this method of meditation. They were meditating on all these different demigods, and the mood is it's all the same, it's all one. Whoever I meditate on, whoever I worship, the result will be the same. And they're meditating on all these different demigods, and in that sense Prabhupada's saying you can't do that. That it doesn't work. This method doesn't work. It's an illusion. Maya. It's an illusion. That's why Mayavadis generally don't necessarily, I don't know that they refer to themselves as Mayavadis, but Prabhupada speaks very strongly against Mayavad. It's like it's the knowledge of illusion, or knowledge which is based on illusion, on the illusion that whoever I worship, whoever I serve, it doesn't matter, the result will be the same. So it has to be taken in that context. As a Vaishnava, or as an aspiring Vaishnava, we do have the mood that we want to become everyone's servant. But what does it mean to serve everyone? It means to share Krishna consciousness with the world, to give everyone the opportunity.
Dhanavir Maharaj turned the statement round a little bit. I was wondering if he got it from that, Pepper, because he said everyone's friend is no one's friend. And I thought it was quite interesting because in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it speaks about defending those who aren't present. So, it can happen in communal life especially, that you'll hear somebody being criticised, and he may be your friend. So if you agree with him and say, oh no, then you're neither the person's friend who you're agreeing with, and you're neither the friend of the person that you say you're the friend of now, because you're feeding the criticism of him. However, if you defend the person who isn't present, then the person who's criticizing him realizes that he's your friend and that you're loyal to him. And he also realizes that if you're his friend, that you'll do the same for him when somebody criticizes him. So you'll actually create a lot of credibility by showing these are my friends and I'm loyal to them and I don't tolerate any type of criticism. Sorry, take it up with the person if you have a problem, but don't speak to it about me. So in that sense, I could see how if you think of Krishna and then you're being all friendly with the demigods, and then you come to worship Krishna, and Krishna's like, well, I thought you were my friend.
I mean, it also depends on the context of worship as well. Like Vaishnavas, traditionally, actually, Vaishnavas do worship certain demigods. Most of the temples established by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the worship of Lord Shiva is a vital part of the Vaishnava worship. But Srila Prabhupada sort of took away from that because he could understand that the restless minds, especially of Westerners, and also he could sort of see how the world was moving in a certain direction, which meant just Krishna, nothing else, and by worshipping Krishna, all the demigods are automatically satisfied. But at the same time, when Srila Prabhupada was travelling, if ever he visited or was sort of staying in like a demigod temple, he would always pay his obeisances to that demigod. He would always pray to those demigods. But what's the mood of a Vaishnava? Please, my dear Lord Shiva, you're the greatest devotee, you're so dear to Krishna, please help me to become a nice devotee of Krishna. My dear Lord Ganesh, you're a great devotee of Lord Nrsingadev, please help me to remove the obstacles that are getting in between me and Krishna. So that's how we can approach demigods. And in that way, Krishna will appreciate that mood. He will appreciate that mood of meditation and worship. It's not necessarily that we have to make demigod worship part of our sadhana, but if in the course of our sadhana we come across demigods, then as a Vaishnava we can also approach them from one Vaishnava to another and ask for their help and guidance. And as far as being a friend of everyone, a Vaishnava, again, Srila Prabhupada was a friend to the whole world. He was everyone's friend because he gave the whole world Krishna consciousness. So, this is also, what we're aspiring for. We can't necessarily claim to be that right now, but we're aspiring that we can also be a friend to everyone by giving Krishna consciousness and sharing Krishna consciousness. That's the great. I heard one, there was a discussion I was listening to last night, and the devotee was describing the 6 loving exchanges in the Nectar of Instruction. And the way that Srila Prabhupada translates is offering prasad and accepting prasad. But he said that actually there's a deeper purport to it as well, which is sometimes revealed in that it's giving nourishment and accepting nourishment, in the sense that we give Krishna consciousness and we accept Krishna consciousness. Prasadam doesn't just mean food that we eat, but it means giving Krishna's mercy and accepting Krishna's mercy. So this is also, being a friend means giving and accepting spiritual nourishment. Is there anything online?
Yes, it's from Gandaki and Nanda Prabhu.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada said that we want to create a school of Brahmins. On the other hand, Lord Chaitanya said that we are not Brahmins or Shudras, etc. How do we reconcile these two concepts?
Well, there's a difference between Brahmins and Brahminical. Srila Prabhupada very much encouraged everyone to adopt Brahminical behavior. He established ISKCON to teach Brahminical practices. One can be a Shudra or a Vaishya or a Kshatriya and still have basic Brahminical tendencies of cleanliness and austerity and so on and so forth. The other thing is that at least my understanding is that Srila Prabhupada was really looking ahead many, many thousands of years. You know, we hear that Lord Chaitanya's instruction is that he wants to take Krishna consciousness to every town and village all around the world. When I was a brahmachari, I had this very naive idea that what that means is that one day there will be temples in every town and village in the world full of brahmacharis and sannyasis and communities and so on and so forth, you know. But realistically and practically, what does it really mean? It means that people's homes will become temples, people's homes will become ashrams, you know. But in order to facilitate that, there needs to be centers where Brahmins stay. Who are Brahmins? Brahmins are teachers. So you have an organization, an organized situation where you have temples and centers and colleges run by Brahmins who then train the whole of society how they can add Krishna to their life. So it's not that every single person in the world is going to be a Brahmin, but Srila Prabhupada wanted ISKCON to be an organization sort of run by Brahmins, in the sense that you have real teachers, real qualified teachers who are teaching and training the whole of society how they can add Krishna to their life. So you have ISKCON in the sense of ISKCON the institution, the centers, the buildings, the temples, the deities. But then you have the broader aspect of ISKCON, in that every single person in the world has the opportunity to learn from these teachers how to add Krishna to their life and how to actually get the same result, how to actually awaken pure Krishna prema within the heart, regardless of what varna and what ashram they happen to be. So that's my understanding of it, Gandaki Prabhu. I don't know if anyone here, or maybe if you would like to sort of add anything to that, or add any reflection on that, or if any of the devotees here would like to sort of add or reflect on any of that.
What was the question?
It was. Srila Prabhupada said that we want to create a school of Brahmins. On the other hand, Lord Chaitanya said we are not Brahmins or Shudras. How do we reconcile these two concepts?
Because another thing is, Prabhupada wanted to establish a school of Brahmins. He also wanted to establish so many other things. You know, establishing a school of Brahmins is definitely one of Srila Prabhupada's goals for ISKCON, but it's not the only goal for ISKCON, and it's not the only sort of occupation for the members of ISKCON. But it's definitely a big part of it, because the Brahmin is the head of society. So by first of all establishing that sort of educational head of society, that situation whereby people could be educated and trained in the principles of Krishna consciousness, then everything else will fall into place as well. When you have the head nicely established, the arms, the belly, the legs, everything else sort of falls into place, and everything else starts to work out as well. So Prabhupada sort of really established, first of all, let's get this in place, and then everything else can fall into place as well.
Yes, it resonates on Ram's point as well. In the Shastakam, first of all, it's Chaitadharma Marjana. So first of all, we're getting cleansed, so we're getting to the Brahminical platform. But then later on, Trinadapi and then Nadanam, it's getting now into, I don't want any prestige, I don't want to be seen as a Brahmin, I don't want to be seen as anything. So as the humility starts to rise, we go beyond the initial stages of purification, and now Lord Chaitanya's in this mood of being, no, don't consider me anything, I just want to be considered. So that's quite advanced, that's quite a developed stage, isn't it? Purification doesn't take place like, you just instantly walk in the door and you become, a topmost Vaishnava. But first of all, let's come to the Brahminical platform, come to the Lord of Goodness, and then from there we can look at going beyond, beyond any prestige or any identification other than just a humble servant.
Is there any comment or any reflection from Gandaki Prabhu? Okay, Hare Krishna. Anything else from anyone? Okay, so we'll stop there, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Shri Kodanitai Maya Pusha ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki
Jai.
jai. Nitai Gaura
Guru, Ramananda